Hey everyone, thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to talk about the 1934 film called Upperworld, which stars Warren William, Mary Astor, and Ginger Rogers in this film. Now, immediately I would say for this film, the title of the film, Upperworld, kind of caught my attention. I always like creative titles. And this one in particular is creative because it was a kind of a play on words from the word underworld. We all know underworld means kind of, stuff involving criminal activity or kind of seedy characters, the underworld. So the creative title alone let me think, well, maybe this, film, the plot might have a twist, leading to something bad potential for the main characters. So that caught my eye. Also the fact that it had Warren William. Now Warren William is, I think, a very underrated actor. From the 1930s, even into the 40s, but the 1930s, Warren William made a very large number of films. Now, many of the films, including this one, are a little bit on the shorter length. For instance, this film, I think, was maybe just a little over 70 minutes long. Another thing about these films, and some of you out there might be hesitant to watch, older films shot in black and white. But no, if you find films like this, that's not a tremendous time commitment. So even if you don't like the film, only 73 minutes long, that's not a huge time commitment. So Warren William, one of his better known films he was in was Imitation of Life, the original version, which was released later that year in 1934. And, Warren William was so versatile in that he played in a lot of comedies, somewhat more, dramatic roles. Certainly Imitation of Life was that, and he also played, detective roles, specifically later on in the Lone Wolf movies. He released several of those, I believe, starting more in the 1940s, the Lone Wolf series of movies. You might want to check those out. So, anyway, Upperworld, this is probably at the end of the day a little more of a drama, but it definitely has some comedic elements. Really starting at the very beginning is kind of funny because it shows sequences of someone mowing the lawn, someone vacuuming, another servant making orange juice, and then the main character's son playing with his toys. And in all those very short scenes, it says, they're basically told they can't do this, somewhat louder or disruptive activity until the main character wakes up. So the main character is Alex Stream in this film, who Warren William plays the main character. He's basically this ultra-rich railroad tycoon, and he's on the verge of a tremendous merger. So he's really portrayed as, what would be one of the, wealthiest men in America at that time. So, he has servants driving him and numerous servants in his home and everything, and he has interactions with his son and his young son, who's playing with toy trains and railroads, which obviously is what his dad does, being a railroad tycoon. And his son is kind of, the character is kind of a little bratty, which one can understand, being the lone child of a very wealthy individual. So Mrs. Stream is played by Mary Astor, and Mary Astor, later she might be more well known for, she was in a prolific number of films, but The Maltese Falcon she was in, and she actually won an Academy Award for The Great Lie. But anyways, yeah, with Mary Astor, she plays Mrs. Stream, and she's really more of like a socialite type, very into throwing parties and that kind of thing. And so that, their relationship is somewhat, I wouldn't say totally frayed, but it certainly could be stronger. And that's where the other main character, Lily, comes into play, who's played by Ginger Rogers. And she basically plays in this film like a burlesque dancer type character. And so basically Lily and Alex Stream, meet one another when he's on his large boat or yacht. And then, then there is kind of another silly scene when they first meet. So basically, they're, leading to more the comedic side of him, of Warren William. They're singing "Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf" in, a very kind of silly, campy way at the end of one scene. So, but the film certainly does get much more serious as it goes on. Another character who kind of lends to the sillier side of things is Alex Stream's, one of his drivers, is played by Andy Devine, and he says some silly things, like he likes to go to the library to try to meet women and stuff. And so Sidney Toller plays a police officer who kind of, I don't want to give too much away, but he has an interaction with Alex Stream earlier, and then when something big happens in the plot later on, he kind of is on Alex Stream's case big time, and trying to prove something, that Alex Stream may have been involved in something not great. So yeah, Sidney Toller, he played in several Charlie Chan films later on as well, so he's pretty well known as well. J. Carroll Naish has a role of a guy who ends up being, he's not in the movie a ton, but he certainly plays an important part. He's like, he plays Lily's kind of, like her boss. She's a dancer, as I said, so he's kind of her boss and everything. So yeah, basically there becomes a relationship with, a bit of a relationship with Alex Stream and Lily. And so that kind of becomes where it's almost kind of like a love triangle, that sort of thing. So that's a big part of the plot. I don't want to give too much of the plot away. I will say, the plot gets a lot more, you know, exciting and intense and serious. And really the last, I'd say, 20-25 minutes of the film is when it really gets pretty serious. And there aren't, too many comedic breaks from then on, which is fine. So, the movie was going somewhat slowly throughout much of it, but then I thought it really got pretty good in that last maybe third of the film, roughly. So yeah, I mean, if you don't normally watch old films, it's always good to mix it up and check out, ones you haven't seen before. I had seen a few films starring Warren William before. I had never seen this one. Again, since it's short in duration, it's not a big investment, but, it's fun watching older. And, this is a quite old film being released in 1934. You can really take a trip back in time. So one of the things I like is the, some of the words they use. Maybe words people would not normally use today, such as Andy Devine's character using the word, dames to refer to, women he's chasing and that kind of thing. You don't hear that word very often today to refer to women. Chummy, that was another pretty new word. Someone said, get chummy, and that's, meaning friendly. And swell, you might hear swell from time to time these days, but not too often. Swell was, I think, used a lot more back then. Kowtowing, I don't think I had heard that word before, which basically kowtowing, acting in a very subservient way. It begins with a K, kowtowing. Or another one, the word Welsh, used in such a way where one of the characters, I believe, said, "Now you're going to Welsh on me," which means kind of refusing to do something or backing out of doing something. So the word usage, I think, can be really interesting. And for someone who loves words like myself, that's just kind of an added bonus of watching these very old movies. So another thing is at times how the movie is shot. So transitioning from one scene to another, they used different techniques back then, sometimes than they do today. So for instance, that brings us to today's vocab word, which is wipe. So a wipe, not something you clean something with, a towel. In this case, a wipe is a transitional device in which a new image is separated from the previous image by means of a vertical, horizontal, or diagonal line that moves across the screen to wipe the old image away. So you're transitioning from one scene to another. And in this case, it was to me, I would call it like a side swipe because the line was moving across the screen like this. But it's basically so I guess it was a vertical line going, whoosh or whoosh to transition from one scene to another. And in today's films, you don't see that kind of transition from scene to scene very often, if ever, that I can think of anymore. So I always like seeing, little things like that in movies. It is a lot of fun. And also, I noticed a lot in old movies, certainly back then, the newspaper, maybe next to the radio at times, but the newspaper was really the main source of information for people to read their daily newspaper and know what's going on in the world. So aside from characters reading newspapers, there's this really good scene where there were 5 separate, still newspaper headlines shot in succession, and what it did to the story, it really progressed the story quickly. So instead of having to add maybe 10-15 minutes of scenes of the actors acting them out, the story was able to progress within, that was maybe 20 to 30 seconds of just showing these newspapers and, with the big bold headlines, and that allowed us to progress the story very quickly. That was towards the very end of the film, and that was unique. That's, again, something you just wouldn't see in today's films. So I thought this was a good, solid film, especially for being one of these mid-1930s films with probably not a huge budget, I'm guessing. But I thought the 3 main actors did well, and especially I was impressed at how well the movie became in that last 20 minutes or so. It really improved quite a bit. So this film really had themes of, I would say, the main theme kind of ended up being relationships, and the importance of cultivating, I would say, current relationships and strengthening them, because perhaps if Mr. Stream had a better relationship with his wife earlier, he might not have sought the friendship of some random woman and everything, in the case of Lily. And I think certainly by the end of the film, Mrs. Stream realized that too. So that was a big theme, and also just the general theme of power and wealth. This guy, Mr. Stream, had, he was portrayed as just wildly wealthy. They threw out they did throw out a few numbers of, him having about $50 million. So, in today's terms, I'm sure that, might be around $1 billion, maybe, I'm guessing. But at one point he did buy a $12,500 diamond bracelet, and I won't tell you who he bought it for or what happens. You'll have to watch the movie to find out, but I'm sure in today's terms that'd be well over $100,000. And also another part, small theme of, maintaining a good image or a positive public image, and certainly with a, public figure of someone so wealthy, and, the social statuses too played a big part in this film. So with all that said, it was a decent, solid film. I would say I enjoyed watching it. So let's do the final rating now. Watch it again, or once is enough. Somewhat on the borderline with this one as well, but ultimately for the 1934 film Upperworld, I'm going to have to say once is enough. It was, as I said, pretty good film, interesting, got pretty good at the end, but I really don't feel like I would gather a whole lot new from watching it again, or it wasn't that enjoyable where I would be itching to watch it again, I certainly want to check out more Warren Williams films from the 30s and 40s, and because there's numerous films where he's the leading man in, and a lot of these, somewhat shorter films. So he's a very talented and I think underrated actor in the scope of things. Very versatile, as we said at the beginning, very versatile. But for Upperworld, once is enough. Once is enough. So hope you enjoyed the video again. Please feel free to leave any type of comments, suggestions. If you want to subscribe to the channel, that'd be great. Check out my book there, available on Amazon if you'd like. I think I do have a couple Warren Williams films actually that I had written about in that book. There are a couple, at least I know for sure off the top of my head, of the 59 films that I picked in there. So I was a little bit familiar with Warren Williams before watching Upperworld, and that's part of why I wanted to check it out, because I hadn't seen a Warren Williams film in a very long time. So again, thanks for tuning in, and enjoy the movies, and until next time.